Hello, this is Dr. Stephen Cangiano. I am the president and co-founder of RDT.Media and Events with its online companion relationship-development.com and humanity-upgrade.com. It is such a pleasure. I've studied this gentleman's work extensively. I highly recommend his classes, etc. Let me give you a brief introduction. This is Dr. Rick Hanson. Rick Hanson, PhD, is a neuropsychologist, senior fellow at the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, New York Times best-selling author. His books are available in 28 languages and include Resilient, Hardwiring Happiness, Buddha's Brain, Just One Thing, Mother Nature, Summa Cum Laude from UCLA, on and on. He's been featured at Harvard, Oxford. He has 135,000 people on his monthly subscribers. His Buddha's Brain Facebook, 650,000 followers. Rick, we could take the whole interview giving your, so let's just get started. Did I miss anything? Anything else you'd want to add in there?
Husband and father.
Oh, there we go. Very good. Father of two boys.
A boy and a girl, now adults.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Son and daughter, and married now 36 plus years. Kind of wild.
Good for you. You know, I want to add something into your introduction. You really epitomize this combination of competence and character. You're very giving with your time, your information. I've actually taken your class. I can highly recommend it. We'll talk more about that later. But I'm going to just give you a little bit of background for a second, because one of the things that you talk about in a lot of your content is this idea of activation versus installation.
Oh, yeah.
And I was in a business where we would bring people on a quarterly basis to events, and we were great at activating these emotions. We were really good. And then after about 3 or 4 events, not only did they not get the results they want, but they seem to lose credibility in themselves because they miss the installation piece. And that's kind of led me to being in RD&T and actually with you here today. Sorry for the long intro there. Can you talk about the activation versus installation? Because this, when you said that, it put it together for me. It put all the pieces together for me.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because when I look at the challenges in the world and in physical health areas as well, plus psychologically for people, to deal with these challenges, we need strengths of various kinds, like mindfulness, caring, happiness, skills. We need to grow the good inside ourselves. And your question is exactly right. How do you help learning land? How do you help change that lasts, right? People will go through experiences, and I can say this as a longtime psychotherapist, as well as a mindfulness teacher and a business coach and a parent. You can help people have all kinds of useful thoughts and feelings and body sensations, but most of them have no lasting value. And that's the dirty little secret in self-help, and we know it's really true. So I've focused on helping the experiences that we're having, whether in formal settings or on your own as you go through your day, helping those experiences to actually change your brain in a lasting way, which is important in its own right. And it's really important to offset what people call the negativity bias of the brain, which makes it like Velcro for bad experiences, but Teflon for good ones. And so both to grow the good in ourselves and to overcome and beat this negativity bias that tilts toward survival, but against quality of life and long-term health and well-being, we need to look for opportunities many times a day to actually register useful experiences, including our good intentions, and help them land so that they can find their home in our heart. And then we have them with us, inside us already, wherever we go.
Yeah. You know, it was when you said this graded activation, but not graded installation in a lot of the self-help coaching, counseling, it struck such a chord with me, because so many people, they activate these positive emotions. They're not installed permanently. They activate them, not install them. And then they seem to like almost get on a little bit of a downward spiral. One of the things you mentioned was that this second step of installation can really be a breakthrough for people in terms of business, their coaching, counseling, even with stress, anxiety, and depression. Can you expound on that for me, please?
Oh, it's a complete breakthrough. Just to put it in a really blunt way, imagine 4 lives, okay? And I'm going to try to do this correctly with the viewer here. So this is time 1, right? And then this is at the end of the day or year or lifetime. And one person's life just goes downhill in terms of something they care about: happiness, resilience, mental health, or being skillful as a leader, being capable of leading in challenging, changing times. They just are worse when they finish the day or year or life than they were when they started. Second life is flat. It's not deteriorating, but there's no gain. There's no growth curve. And then imagine a third life where there's a straight line of improvement. This is a person who's becoming happier, stronger, more loving, wiser, more peaceful, more capable along the way. And then you imagine a fourth life that's curvilinear, that rises. That's someone who's learning how to learn. They're getting better at growing over the course of their life. And that makes all the difference in the world to have the fourth and third lives compared to the second and first lives. And I think what you said at the beginning is extremely useful for anybody that's been in coaching or human resources training or business consulting, or has been a healthcare professional, as you and I have been in our careers, and is involved, therefore, in trying to help people be more motivated toward their health or more willing to be compliant with treatment and so forth. Anyone who cares about this territory should focus on how the brain actually changes. And I think it's actually, the more I think about it, the more it strikes me as, in a way, appalling that people who are in the growth business, the whole profession of clinical psychology, the last century, and I consider people who are in the growth business have a noble calling. It's a heroic undertaking in many ways. We're trying to help people. That's important, okay. But still, it's weird, at least, if not appalling at most, that the growth profession has not developed a theory of growth that's at all embedded in our neurobiology. And without that clarity about the actual how of growing, of changing for the better, we then are not very effective when we try to help people grow. Some people know intuitively how to help people grow in ways that last and change the body itself. And on your own, there's some incidental change that can occur for people. But to me, the great opportunity is exactly what you say. It's not to have new and more shiny experiences. We're already really good at that. It's how to help those experiences take the 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds to actually begin physical processes of changing the brain. And that's what I totally focus on in my own work, as you know. And I think that's not the magic pill, or, there's no magic pill, but it's the X factor. It's the strength of strengths. The skill of skills is knowing how to change your brain for the better along the way, which also is the foundation of any real autonomy or self-reliance. If you cannot take charge of your own change process that's embedded in your physical body, your nervous system, if you can't take charge of that, then you are being pushed around and who you are becoming tomorrow. Your mood, your attitude, your outlook, your sense of self, your sense of worth, how happy or depressed you are, how strong or weak you are. Who you are becoming tomorrow is out of your control. And that's a terrible thing. So to me, what you and I are talking about here is fantastic. It changes your whole day. It changes your life when you know that every day is an opportunity to help more of the authentic good in your life to actually stick to you and increasingly be you as you live your way into the future.
So as you're saying this, and I want to make sure I say this properly, because this is a quote from one of your lectures, and you say that now neuroplasticity, now we're both from the medical profession and we get into the swamp of these technical terms. I want to have maybe you define that, but I think what you said is that neuroplasticity is one of the most important discoveries in the history of humanity. Am I overstating that, or did you say something similar to that?
I would probably say something similar to that. I mean, it's been known for over a century that if a child learns to walk instead of crawl, or a business manager learns how to be more patient and skillful in running team meetings, let's say, or a person learns how to have more of a stable, I call it an unshakable core of well-being and inner peace. If a person develops these things, something has to physically change. Otherwise, we're left with magic. And we kind of leave magic. I believe in magic, but we leave it out of the scientific account. Something had to change. So there's been a long understanding that the brain had to be plastic in the sense of being changeable. But what is radical, and it's exactly right what you said, in the last 20 years, there have been extraordinary breakthroughs in really understanding the ways in which the brain changes and the degree to which it changes and how to use our attention and other factors like helping experiences be longer, or feeling them in our whole body, or focusing on what's rewarding in our various experiences. These engage little mechanisms inside the brain that, in effect, take the song of the experience that's playing in the inner iPod and record it in the brain so that the residues of that experience actually sink in. So those discoveries have been fantastic. And the inner geek that probably you and I share just is amazed at all these little molecular R2D2 units that are converting passing experiences, if we help them, into some kind of lasting structural change inside. You know the saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. So what I'm very interested in is the specific skills, which we may well talk about. What can people actually do concretely? What are the actionable items, the takeaways, the deliverables here, if you will, that people can actually do to help those neurons fire together in such a way that they really actually wire together. And I just think it's both deeply interesting and incredibly practical.
Yeah. So you give a couple of examples, the London taxi drivers who actually part of their brain enlarges or enhances because they have to learn the maps of London. And then another one with someone plays the piano, the motor skill areas of the brain. And that's what, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what neuroplasticity is that you can, with thoughts, you can actually change the structure of your brain. Am I saying that correctly, or is that too simplistic?
No, you're right. And thanks for helping me be really concrete about it. So if you just think about it, we got a brain, and you know these things, but I'll say them for people in general. It's got a lot of cells in it, 1.1 trillion cells, 100 billion neurons, as many neurons in our head as there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. These neurons are firing on average 5 to 50 times a second. They make thousands of connections with each other. So that means that inside our head is a network with several hundred trillion little microprocessors, little synapses at the connections between these neurons. So that brain and all the activity in it is enabling people to have experiences of something like, let's say, gratitude or self-worth, or maybe like me in my relationship with my wife, that moment where you realize, oh, things go better when I do this instead of that. I'm going to try to help myself remember to do this from now on. I want to be like they say about rats in mazes, one trial learners. I want to be a one trial learner where the cheese is. Which tunnel has the cheese? All right. So to be having these experiences, there must be underlying neural activity. So we're having experiences, good intentions, insights, positive feelings. To enable those experiences, there must be underlying neural activity that correlates with it. It sounds complicated, but the two just go together. What it means, though, is that if you help yourself have experiences that are useful and you turbocharge them with the skills that I teach a ton of, as you know, if you turbocharge those experiences, that enlists underlying neural factors, okay? A little machinery deep down in here in the brain. And what that means is that those little underlying neural factors that are physical forms of firing, physical activity inside the genetic expression in the cells, little physical ebbs and flows of neurotransmitters. If you can work that system right, you can kind of hack the hardware. you can make those underlying physical factors really, really, really leave lasting physical traces behind. And that's the process of hardwiring happiness into your nervous system, inner strength, self-worth, commitment to exercise, commitment to sobriety, whatever you want to focus on, you can actually hardwire it into yourself over time. That's how the process works. The mechanisms are many mechanisms, but the essence is really simple. Have it. That's the activation phase of the experience. Whatever you want to grow, you must begin with an experience of it. Traits are grown from states. So you start with a state, usually because you're already experiencing it. Maybe because someone is listening to you or checking out one of your wonderful programs or reading some of the material you have, and they start realizing things or having feelings inside. So you start with the state, but then you can help that state become a trait, deeply wired into yourself over time. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's for you. You have a great algorithm called HEAL, which is, and we'll talk. Well, I want to talk about that in a second. One thing you mentioned, and actually was reading that mindfulness, because this is a big topic now. Mindfulness is so important. And one of the things you said, and I was curious to hear this, is that mindfulness is not always enough. And I remember I actually ran a wellness clinic in the city for a couple of years, and one of the things we would do is we would recommend that people would meditate. And then one of the gentlemen that worked there scolded me for it. He says, Steve, you can't just tell people to meditate because they need to learn how to. There's a lot of techniques and et cetera involved. And then recently I was reading an article from University of New Zealand, Massey University in New Zealand, and they did an exhaustive study on meditation. And they said there's a lot of researcher bias in some of the studies. There's actually some adverse effects. Tell me, as really a world expert on meditation and mindfulness, give us your synopsis or your feedback on those types of things. What is mindfulness? When is it used? When is it?
Yeah. These are great questions, Steve. Really deep. So mindfulness has both a kind of narrow specific meaning, and these days it has a really kind of broad and fuzzy meaning, both two kinds of meanings. First way to use the term is in the traditional sense of simply sustained present moment awareness. In other words, instead of being lost in thought or distracted or caught up in inner movies, whether they're resentments and regrets, negative little movies, or fantasies about where you're going on vacation next year, instead of that, sustained present moment awareness. The sustained present moment awareness can be applied internally to what you're feeling inside. It can be applied to what's happening around you, a truck driving next to you on the freeway, or the play of emotion in the face of someone that you're trying to sell to, say, in business, or your partner. You're trying to understand why your partner feels the way your partner feels. We can be mindful of things outside us too. So mindfulness goes both ways, and mindfulness can be really wide open. It can just take in the whole stream of consciousness at once, or it can narrow down like a laser beam on some particular thing, like focusing on just the sensations of breathing at the upper lip. That's the essence of mindfulness. It's morally neutral. A burglar is mindful as well as a saint. The broader meaning of mindfulness these days brings in other things like self-compassion, self-acceptance, a kind of lovingness, a sense of just sort of taking life as it is without struggling with it. These are good things, but you can see that that's a bigger, fuzzier definition. Mindfulness, there's a tremendous amount of research on how mindfulness, both in the narrow sense and in the broad sense, are really good for us. They're good for long-term health. They're good. They make people tougher. People are more able to handle trauma and loss and setbacks if they are mindful. As people practice mindfulness, there are lots of sort of results that tend to occur over time, like building up a more stable place that is undisturbed inside you, from which you can be aware of thoughts and feelings that are upsetting, but with more sense of not being swept away by them. And that makes all the difference in the world. You know, If we're completely swept away by our reactions to things, we're lost, we're swept. But if we have a place inside us where we can stand to witness what's happening, which could be very painful, could be hard, but at least we're not completely drowning in it. That makes a lot of difference for people. So mindfulness in general is a good thing. Now, if someone is mindful of material inside themselves that's overwhelming, the ways in which mindfulness opens the trap door to your own interior can lead to people being flooded with painful, difficult, traumatic material. It's not the fault of mindfulness. It's the fact that people just lack other resources inside, like being able to calm themselves down or have the feeling inside that others love them and are with them as they face what happened in their childhood or really come to terms with a betrayal in adulthood, say. That's important to grow. So yeah, it's appropriate to be a little cautious about how we use mindfulness, like any other tool, and to make sure that when you pop open the trap door to your own insides, you're not opening a trap door to hell. Okay, be careful about that. Now, meditation. Meditation is a kind of sustained application of mindfulness. There are many different techniques, and I think it's useful to make a distinction between forms of meditation, or you could say contemplative practice generally, that involve a relationship with something transcendental, like God. The form that meditation takes for many people worldwide, probably the most common form, is prayer. There are also secular forms of meditation that do not involve a sense of something divine. Mindfulness of breathing in the body, mindfulness of self-compassion, mindfulness of gratitude, mindfulness of a candle. So either way, a person is being meditative. Now, if you do some really intense form of meditation, like a 10-day retreat in total silence, and the trap doors are starting to open up inside you, and there's a lot of unresolved, creepy stuff in there, you could have a bad experience. Okay, don't do that. If you think you might be at risk, be careful. Respect the power of the dark side of the force, as it were. Don't underestimate it. But that does not mean that meditation retreats are bad for everybody. It just means that, like so many things, it's like saying, well, a black diamond ski slope is bad. Well, it's not bad. Just make sure you're capable of skiing at that level before you go down the slope. And then if you are, it's fantastic. Meditation retreats can be incredibly useful for many, many people, including myself. So to me, that's how to understand these cautions. And sometimes what people do, and you see it here as you see it sometimes elsewhere, you'll have these critics. I think of them as professional grumps or professional Grinches who fasten on a rare negative outcome. That risk is real for those vulnerable people doing intensive practice. And then they generalize from that fairly rare event to some kind of concerns about the whole business. That's just silly. Be careful, be aware, be thoughtful, have a sense of what you're doing, but otherwise, there's enormous research on the physical health benefits and the mental health benefits and the relationship benefits of some kind of regular mindfulness practice. I think it's a little bit like exercise. You go to the gym, the super fitness people there, and you say, hey, what's the right exercise? What's the best exercise? And they'll tell you straight, the best exercise is the one you'll do every day. That's the best exercise. So I would say to people, you want to know the best meditation? It's the one you'll do every day for a minute or more. Find something you'll do every day. Carve out a little space for yourself, a minute or more, where you say, this time matters. Sorry, hold the calls, hold the kids. I'm going to do this for me. And then for that minute or 10 or 40, just find something that works for you. One of the simplest things of all is to sustain awareness of the body. Even counting the breaths, like a full breath is 1, the next full breath is 2. And do that not to get caught up in counting, but to make yourself stay consistently aware of your breathing and watch the fact that around the 3rd or 4th or 5th breath, wow, the distractions really start coming in. And that's very educational, to watch all the distracting activity in your own mind against the quiet backdrop of this focus on some simple object of attention, such as the sensations of breathing. Or make it more emotional. If breathing is too boring and you get restless and you can't do it, walk while you breathe. That'll make it more stimulating. Or focus on something that's more emotionally rewarding that will help capture your attention in a stable way so you can stay grounded and train your attention. A more emotionally rewarding object like feelings of gratitude. Make gratitude your object of meditation. Meditate on gratitude and contentment. Wow, what a great meditation. So thanks for letting me give this kind of long answer here. I hope it was useful.
That's good, because
that's good for now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to meditate, they understand and they hear about the benefits, but they don't know exactly what to do. And it's just kind of a lot of time given as advice without the meat that you just gave them. So this is extremely valuable for people.
Yeah, that's great. If I could, I'm going to stick my neck out here and I'm going to suggest a meditation that I do that is related to the evolution of the brain. And you'll encounter it, I think, in the third class of the positive neuroplasticity training, which is being released this week and you're engaging. And it has to do with the fact that in a kind of a metaphorical, funny way, we all have a little lizard inside us, the reptilian brainstem. We all have a little mouse inside us that relates to the mammal subcortex, sits on top of the brainstem and has parts of it that people have heard about more and more, like the amygdala. All right. And then on top of that, we have a little monkey inside us all, the human primate neocortex. And I think biological evolution is simply a fact. It is what it is. Simultaneously, I myself have a strong sense of divine that's meaningful to me. If people don't care to think in terms of biological evolution, they can still just take it as it is, that we do have this brainstem that we share structurally with reptiles. We do have a subcortex we share with all mammals, and we do have a big neocortex, simpler versions of which can be found in the primates. So the takeaway from this as a meditation is that these three layers of the brain are related to how we manage our three major needs for safety, satisfaction, and connection. This gives us a very fundamental model. We manage safety by avoiding harm. We manage satisfaction by approaching reward, avoiding and approaching. And we manage connection, relationships, through attaching to others. So we have these three overarching systems that motivate us and manage our lives: avoiding, approaching, and attaching. So the meditation is to take a few minutes, 10 minutes, you could do it longer if you want, and just kind of use this as a little roadmap. Start by, once you take a minute to get sort of centered and settled, and then focus on experiences of safety, like feeling protected or calming, or feeling strong inside, able to deal with threats, or feeling that there are others who are resources for you, who are in your life. They'll help you. And just help these experiences sink in. Don't focus on all the complicated story about it. Focus on the experience of calm strength. That's pretty awesome. And remember, neurons that fire together wire together. So as you marinate in these useful experiences, they will be soaking into you, literally, weaving their way into the fabric of your being as you kind of marinate in them. Pretty good. Then, after a few minutes have passed, whenever you want, focus on feelings of satisfaction and contentment, like gratitude, a sense of enoughness already. Yes, there might be challenges to safety. Yes, there might be challenges to satisfaction, but in the core of your being, in terms of satisfaction, you can feel an enoughness already. What you're glad about, the pleasures you've had, the many, many little goals and some big ones you've accomplished and have been successful at along the way. Many opportunities to feel a growing contentment inside, the basis of which you meet the next moment. Pretty beautiful. Now you're feeling calm and strong. Now you're feeling contented and kind of happy and grateful. And then you move into love. You focus on, all right, feelings of caring flowing out of you, compassion for others, friendliness toward others, not making anything up, just your own natural good heart. You start feeling it. Also be aware of caring flowing toward you, even in imperfect relationships. People who are friendly, who do appreciate you, maybe who love you. More and more, you're just kind of marinating in warm feelings flowing in and flowing out. It's great. And then just take another minute or two to kind of wrap it up. Rest it in a fundamental sense of ease, around which could be pain, could be anxiety, could be you got to deal with some hassle in the day to come. But in the core of your being, there's a sense of unshakable well-being. That's a wonderful meditation, which involves, to really sum it up in a goofy way, petting the lizard, feeding the mouse, and hugging the monkey.
I love your analogy of safety, satisfaction, connection, and how it relates to the different levels of the brain. And you go into that in a lot of detail in PNT, positive neuroplasticity, in your class. That's a great segue, because another thing you talk about, and again, I hope I get the terminology correct, is our evolutionary glitch, our Stone Age brain and the negativity bias, which is that perpetuated by this reptilian, mammalian, neocortex, monkey brain, as you say? Get into, because I think that's I was hearing your brain is designed for survival, not happiness.
Right.
And yeah, maybe you can comment on that for me.
Oh, this is one of the most useful, practical, in the trenches result of 20 years of neuroscience. It's this idea that Mother Nature has evolved in us, thanks Mom, a negativity bias that makes it like Velcro for bad, but Teflon for good. And that's because in the wild, think about Jurassic Park or Game of Thrones, these really intense, hard environments, okay? In those environments, our ancestors needed to get carrots, like food, and they needed to avoid sticks, like predators or aggression inside their band or between bands. Both are important, carrots and sticks. But if you don't get a carrot today, you'll have a chance at one tomorrow. If you fail to avoid that stick today, no more carrots forever. So sticks, in terms of raw survival, passing on genes that pass on genes that pass on genes. As you know, that's the engine of biological evolution. Sticks have more urgency and impact. So we are designed, maybe I'll just go through it real fast and people can recognize themselves doing it every day. The brain is designed to do 5 things all the time. Scan for bad news, over-focus upon it compared to good news, like someone smiled at you or you finished something, you got something done. Scan for bad news, over-focus on it, overreact to it, fast-track it into memory, once burned, twice shy, and then sensitize the brain through the stress hormone cortisol to upsetting, irritating, worrying experiences, so the brain becomes even more reactive to them over time in a vicious cycle. That's Mother Nature's plan. Now, it was really useful back in the Serengeti Plains when most people were dead by their 40th birthday, if not sooner. The short-term gain of the negativity bias was worth the long-term cost to physical health, relationships, and well-being. But today, for most people, the negativity bias, it adds a lot of excess burden. It makes people more upset than they really need to be. It shadows their days. It drags down mood over time. It makes people more anxious and prickly over time. It also creates lots of issues in relationships. We won't go into politics right now, but you can imagine how the negativity bias gets working in groups in ways that are vicious cycles. You know, Group A gets scared, and then by Group B, and then Group A acts in ways that are threatening to Group B. So then Group B reacts in ways that are even more threatening for Group A, and round and round and round it goes. So what to do about it? In certain situations, like you're working in a war zone, the negativity bias is pretty useful. Or maybe you're growing up in what feels like a war zone. You're alcoholic parents or you're living in an impoverished neighborhood. It's really tough. There's a place for it occasionally. You know, I'm, in my own kind of do-gooder way, a pretty tough guy. And I've learned that life can be really hard, and sometimes you got to really bring it. Okay, maybe sometimes it's useful, but most of the time, the negativity bias is not your friend. Day by day, it creates this invisible cost that gradually builds up a stress load and an emotional unhappiness load that gradually wears down. And one of the most important things for me is to don't marinate in the negative. Just step back from it mindfully, because then you stop reinforcing it. That's one of the main benefits of mindfulness, because when we're witnessing our anger or our hurt or our physical pain, we're not reinforcing it in the brain. We're detached from it. We're having it. We're open to it. We're not trying to suppress it, but we're not taking it into ourselves. It's just passing through awareness then. And then the other big takeaway, besides not marinating in the negative, the other big takeaway is to look for authentic, beneficial experiences to rest your mind upon. And as you rest your mind upon them, it takes its shape from them. If you rest your mind repeatedly every day, like right now, I feel your kindness and your respect, and that you're a top quality kind of person, which adds value to it. I feel that. I'm not flattering you. I feel it. I'm recognizing the fact we're not best friends. We don't know each other super well. And still, it's not less than what it is. Right here is an opportunity to see something good and then help it become a good experience, rather than what most people do. They see it, but they don't feel anything. They don't see it in the first place. And then if they do see it, they don't feel anything. And then if they feel something, they don't take it into themselves. They don't help it sink in. And that goes to finish, I guess, my little rant here, the ways that those of us in management and self-help and teaching and healthcare practice and therapy and coaching and all the rest of it, we don't often enough recognize that knowing does not equal feeling, and feeling does not equal learning or growing from it. And our opportunity is to help people see the good that is true, including in their own good heart. Second, feel something good as a result. And then third, the opportunity is, once that good feeling is present, help people internalize it. That's where the great opportunity is, I think.
Beautiful. Yeah, yes. And I love your analogies there with the how do we instill or install these positive traits? And that I've been around this industry for a long time, and I don't know if there's anybody better at taking that message home and actually delivering on the goods, especially, as I said, after taking the class. I've actually been through the first 3 weeks of your class already and looking forward to the next 3. And so why is it so, it's counterintuitive. So I just read a book by a gentleman, Steven Pinker, and he talks about what's called Enlightenment Now. Mm-hmm. And he really goes into how these times we're in are fundamentally different. You know, the 3 major causes of death to human beings, famine, war, and plague, are virtually all but eliminated. And yet, you know, he talks about how it's 9-to-1 positive to negative in the news. 9 times as many negative stories as there is one. He also, I think I heard you speak about this, and Dr. Boyatzis from Case Western talks about how in a marriage you need a healthy marriage has 5-to-1 positive to negative. How do we make people, how do we upgrade people to have them really have a much better relationship with the positive to the negative? Not eliminate the negative, because as you say, it's important, but I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but we as a society, as a world, do not have a good relationship with the positive to the negative.
It's a really fantastic question. And I'm probably, it's a weird thing to say, the world's leading expert on the deliberate internalization of beneficial experiences, right? I've just really been fascinated
Well,
by it.
let me break in. That's not an exaggeration. I mean, I know because it is not an exaggeration because I've studied your work. I'm sorry to interrupt, but please go
Oh no,
ahead.
I appreciate that. My own kind of family culture runs through North Dakota, kind of a Midwestern thing, and there's a certain just wanting to not overclaim anything or et cetera. So, but my point really is about that. Even though I've certainly been deeply engaged with this, including at the neurological level, it remains mysterious to me why there is such a strong cultural force to not focus on factually based positive information and positive experiences. Like, why would people swerve away from that? I don't get it. And why has there not been more clarity about the importance of, and then just the how to do it, of internalizing these beneficial experiences, which is crazy because, of course, we would want our children, we'd want our friends, we want our workers, our employees, our clients, our patients. We want people to internalize and grow good things inside of any kind, right? Impulse control, commitment to social justice, happiness, inner peace, whatever. And yet, we've almost completely ignored the how of self-help, the actual how that change sticks to us, right? So, in terms of the culture, I think that we do live in curious times. And one thing I would say is that the little lizard, mouse, and monkey are very, very vulnerable to fear mongering. We're very, very vulnerable to fear. And you can just see the ways in which it all scales, whether it's a playground in preschool with a bunch of 4-year-olds, or a cafeteria in high school, or a family, or then you start building out organization, company, country. You've just seen the ways over history that people bully others through using fear. And I think what I'm trying to say here is incredibly evident throughout history. And I'm not taking a political stand to point this out, that we are very vulnerable to manipulations based on fear. And so you have people who then use those manipulations very cleverly, whether it's to persuade people to upgrade the car they're buying, or to stay silent on a schoolyard, or give the bully the basketball, or vote for one person or another. And I think that for me, one of the deep purposes of that meditation I described, which I summarize as peace, contentment, love, because that's where you're marinating, a deep sense of, in 3 oversimplified umbrella terms, you're marinating in a sense of peacefulness in terms of safety, contentment in terms of satisfaction, love in terms of connection. As people repeatedly internalize that, they're harder to manipulate with fear and greed and us against them,
Right.
made up conflicts. And one of the results of getting stronger inside in the way I'm describing is that you get better at dealing with real hard things, with real bad things. I don't believe in positive thinking at all. The last thing in the world I want to do is look out at the world through rose-colored glasses. I'm a longtime rock climber. I'm really good at assessing risk within a millimeter of how close I can get to that edge, but without going over the edge. It's really important to be able to do. And for me, there's something fundamentally deeply tough-minded about the approach I'm describing with you, and which characterizes my work and my online programs, as you know. This tough-minded clarity about the challenges we face outside, the challenge of the negativity bias inside, and the importance, therefore, of growing strengths to deal with these challenges over time. So it's a very tough, it's not some kind of new age, fuzzy, touchy-feely thing that motivates me. It's like a guy in the trenches who realizes, wow, we've got to grow stuff inside or get them in our inner backpack. And then that's what we draw on down the long road of life.
And I've read, like I said, I've read a lot of your stuff. And this is really, correct me if this is like your mission in life, to really bring this message forward. And Humanity Upgrade is the same thing, is how do we transform in a very predictable way, how do we transform people's way of thinking? Because the reality of our world is so much better than it has ever been. There's every reason to be people to have that safety, satisfaction, connection on a higher, more improving level. And yet, in some places it is better, and in other places it seems like it's getting worse. And I know that that's kind of a mission in your work and what you're trying to do.
Well, thank you for saying that. Well, two things. One, given the power of fear, you can see the ways in which, whether again at all scales, in a family or a schoolyard or a company or a town or a country, you can see that there's a long-standing strategy of, I'll just in a word, I'll say bullies, whether the bully is a CEO or a father or a prime minister, that the bully will try to break things. And then once they're broken, and therefore stir up fear related to breaking things of one kind or another. Systems, institutions, relationships, physical objects. And then based on what the bully has broken, stir up fear, which the bully says, you need me to keep you safe now. But it was the bully who broke things in the first place. Right. So you start to see this, when you start to understand this as the underlying script, it's like recognizing a certain kind of a movie. You walk in, you don't know what it's about, but 10 minutes in you go, oh, I know this movie. It's like a spy movie, or I know this movie, it's a rom-com, or I know this movie, the seemingly nice boyfriend turns out to be a serial killer. Oh yeah, I know that movie. Anyway, it's like when you recognize the script, you see it. So I think that's a useful thing to see.
Yeah. And Rick, so this is another thing that actually concerns me. You have people who are kind of going to the past, the bullies, but also what's concerning, and we could go on all day, so maybe we should close on this, is that the other concern I have personally, is that this unbelievable accelerating change.
Yeah.
Automation, digitization. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the predictions about, the Oxford Martin School, 47% of jobs will be obsolete by 2030, and the 81 to 87% to the Congress, people making under $20 an hour their jobs will be lost to automation. Yeah. How does this we have the bullies you're talking about, those people who with fear, but then we also have this very real rapid progression, this age of transformation, like we call it. How does that factor in? How do we move forward in that context?
Oh, given the ways in which what we know today will be for many, many people obsolete in 20 years, if not 2 years.
Sure.
That takeaway is the most important thing to know today is how to learn what you need to learn tomorrow. Including not just book learning, ideas and facts and information, but social emotional learning how to become more skillful in different kinds of ways with other people or in what you do, or knowing how to bring general abilities to solve problems to problems we can't even imagine, or opportunities we can't even imagine that are going to be appearing in 5 years from now. So the material that you and I are really focusing on, learning how to learn, learning how to help yourself change for the better, to be truly agile and nimble as these disruptive forces ripple through us. That's the most important thing to know. Knowing how to, I call it informal, as you know, take in the good, so that you help it really land inside. That's the most important thing to know, because that's the universal process of learning that you can apply to anything. To use a kind of funny analogy, a year from now, certainly 10 years from now, we don't know what kind of rivers are going to be washing through our life, and we don't know what kind of fish are going to be in them. But if you are universally competent at fishing, if you know how to fish anything, you're going to be okay. And so therefore, learning how to fish anything, in my silly metaphor, is the most important thing to learn these days. And that's what you and I focus on.
Yeah, that's beautiful. As I said, we could go on all day. I want to leave with this. From my perspective, I think being able to create your emotions rather than be at the effect of all this negativity bias and all this going on is really what the positive neuroplasticity course does. Is that one of the main focuses? Am I on the right track there? To be able to create your emotions, create your experiences rather than be the effect of them.
That is really well said. Although it is a little bit of a slippery slope into trouble. So I just want to make a clear distinction here. Most of the time when we're experiencing something useful, it's already happening. Like I said earlier, I have a nice sense of camaraderie and kinship with you and mutual respect. And it's good. On those 0 to 10 intensity scale, it's not a 10, but it's more than a 1. It's real. Whatever it is real. So most of the time we're having useful experiences, like you're getting something done or you have a nice interaction with another person. It's already happened. You don't have to create it. It's already authentic. That's important to know because it addresses the objection sometimes people have that this is just about faking. It's not about faking it. It's about harvesting the feelings you're already having or the thoughts you're already having. All right. That said, it's perfectly appropriate to self-generate happiness and love and compassion and fortitude and grit, to reach down inside yourself and pull them up. It's perfectly appropriate. And in fact, it's at the core of coping and adapting and resilience. Now, the more that you grow traits of happiness and love and inner peace and self-worth, the more that you grow those traits inside you, the more that they foster themselves as states. In other words, as you lift your mood, you're more likely to have happy experiences in the future. As you stabilize a resting state of lovingness with other people, even people that are your adversaries, you're more able to stay there when the oatmeal really hits the fan. And so I think that people structure different values. Like, I think there are 3 major classes of why be alive: quality of life, service, and learning, including spiritual development. I think most purposes in life fall into one of those 3 categories. And quality of life is the ordinary experience of well-being, day in and day out. Do you feel loved by others? Are you happy where you are? What's your quality of life? And most of the factors that determine your actual experience of quality of life are inside yourself, even in really, really tough conditions. So I would definitely want people to be able to, increasingly at will, be the masters of their own house. Be the masters of your own house. And be at peace inside yourself with who you are, all of who you are, while at the same time, the Buddha had a kind of a phrase about the purpose of training. And the words are kind of formal as they're translated, but they have a very clear meaning. He said, you should train yourself to develop a mind, and by which he doesn't mean just intellect. That's the least of it. It's your whole heart, your whole being. You should train your whole being such that it is malleable, so that you're not so rigid. You can actually grow and change for the better. And it is wieldy. You can wield it. You can use it for the sake of yourself and of other beings. To me, that's the purpose. And that's a beautiful path. And it's characterized by having and internalizing beneficial experiences, most of which are enjoyable.
That's beautiful. Rick, we could go, I could literally talk to you for hours.
Yeah,
I really do appreciate your time. Your resources are phenomenal. It'll all be listed here. And any final parting words? Have we covered it all, you think? Or
yeah, what I would tell people is there are a lot of very useful little hacks you could do to your own mind-brain system, little methods. And you and I, we didn't really talk about them, so I would really encourage people, go to my website, you'll have the links and tons of free material there, and you can also check out my online programs. They will go into the detail of many, many kinds of methods people can use to really take in the experiences they're having. Okay, great. The second thing I would just say that I think I'm so struck by is that inside your own mind, like it's like a temple in there, no one can stop you, including even in the worst day of your life or the worst place of your life. No one can stop you inside your own mind in how you relate to what you're experiencing and relate to what's happening and how you try to help yourself grow and learn from it and heal from it or become more skillful from it or just deepen in your spiritual perspective about life. No one can stop you from growing inside your own temple. And no one can do it for you, which makes it credible. It's on us to do this ourselves, which to me gives it an authenticity.
Yeah, and it's so true. And again, I can without reservation promote the positive neuroplasticity training. It's affordable. It has so many tools that we couldn't cover now. Heal, which is a great tool, plus many, many others. And so, Rick, I just, again, a level of competence and character and compassion unmatched. We love having you here. We're really, really proud to have you as part of this, as a contributor here. And signing off, this is Dr. Stephen Cangiano, president and co-founder of RDT.Media and Events. Thanks again, Rick. Love to hope you can come back.
I'd love to. Thank you, Steve.